What put me on the path that my life has taken? I think from a very young age, the recognition of the enormity of avoidable human suffering that surrounds us. Uh, there's a scholar called Akhil Gupta who tried to calculate how many people die in India from completely preventable causes every year. And he came up with a conservative figure of 2 million. To put that figure in perspective, the number of people who died in the Great Bengal famine was 3 million. And the fact that this happens and we don't care, I think is, our ability to see and look away. I think that's one thing that concerns me. The second is, and one can talk about 2 million people, and but each one of them has a story. Each one of them is a human being just as much as you and I. I recall one of the most painful conversations I've ever had, which is with a group of Musahar women who were talking about many things, and then they said, what is the most painful lesson that we have to teach our children? And I said, what is it? And they said, the lesson of how to sleep hungry. And I thought about what life would have looked like to me if I had to teach my daughter the lesson that, little one, there'll be many days every month for the rest of your life when you won't have food, and you must learn how to sleep hungry. I also think I worry not just about poverty, but about the indignity that it creates, and the hopelessness of a whole segment of our people who are exiled even from hope. If you are the child of one homeless mother who is raped every other night, and who survives by picking rags or selling her body, who's never able to send you to school, what would life in terms of its future look like to you? So the exile of from both dignity and hope. And third, I think what drives my work is the concern about the power of hate as it competes with the power of love. And standing in Ahmedabad in the Sabarmati Ashram, I must talk about 2002 and the violence that engulfed this city, the kind of hatred, the kind of brutality, and the consent of most of us, the normalization of that hate, the acceptance of it, the legitimization of those who led that hate, I think is something that worries me a lot. And you really have to go into just Juhapara here while you're here to look at people who battle the consequences of hate for lifetimes. Go to Tilak Vihar in Delhi. Go to Muzaffarnagar where new Juhaparas are being created, where people have been exiled from their homelands only because of the God they worship, and who have to construct new lives in isolation and in hate. That is what also drives my work. And lastly, the inadequacy of our answers. The former Prime Minister, former Finance Minister Chidambaram and Mr. Montague were separately asked, how long will it take for poverty to go? And very unproblematically, they both replied 2040. And it is a poverty that is defined in a very minimalistic way. So they're really saying what starvation type of poverty is not going to go before 2040, and that's all right. That means that every living poor person, we're not even promising that their lives are going to change significantly in their lifetimes, and that should be all right because we are on a path of growth. What have I learned in the work that I've tried to do? I've learned firstly about how much is possible. Whatever its limits, all of us sitting here and here have recognized, I think, in our lifetimes how much is possible. I think that in my work with people, the single biggest lesson that I've learned is the intrinsic possibility of human goodness that resides in all of us. And it's extraordinary. I spent the early years of my life, working life, as an IS officer. And sitting, I used to have, the typical block development officer or whatever whom you see, and working with them and saying, let's work with leprosy patients who are sort of cast away from society, or let us work. And the fact that they did, and they did it with so much passion. I've seen goodness reside and emerge everywhere. And I think that's the other big lesson that I've learned from this work. The importance of creating truly egalitarian teams, that working class people and people who've had formal education, people of different communities working together as truly equals, the amount that you can learn from each other and work together. And the third big lesson is the importance of battling hate with love. That you cannot, as Martin Luther King said, that you cannot fight darkness with darkness. It will only create more darkness. And so if we are worried about a world of indifference and hate, then everything that we do, our politics has to be an alternative politics which is constructed around the premise of hate, of public compassion, of solidarity, of belonging to each other. And that really brings me to the last question of what are the challenges. The challenges internally are, I echo what Vijay said, the enormous difficulties of ethical consistency, of living a life in conformity with what one believes, and to do it so imperfectly from day to day. But in terms of the larger society, how is it so difficult to construct a society and a politics which is centered around the idea of mutual caring, that we belong to each other? Noam Chomsky said, he was asked to define social protection. He said it is simply the idea that we need to take care of each other. But he said, we live in times where this is considered an extremely subversive idea which must be crushed at all costs. How do we reclaim that idea of public conversation? How do we have also alternative conversations with young people? Every second Indian today is below the age of 25. There'll never be perhaps a period in history when so many young people live together in one place, because families are going to get smaller. This should be a moment of the greatest of hope for India. And I still am able to hope because every second Indian is below the age of 25. But I think the kinds of conversations that people like us in our generation have had with young people, at least when I was in college, for whatever it was worth, most of our conversations around coffee used to be about how we would make the world better. Today we have confined the dreams of young people to how I can get the next variation of a mobile phone or whatever. The possibility of of the world changing for the better, and you and I being part of it, we have not created credible role models which allow young people to believe in the possibility of being part of building a better society. And I think that worries me as well. So reclaiming the ideas of public compassion and social solidarity and hope for young people, I think, and the ways we live our own lives, these are the biggest challenges that leave me. Thank you.